Welcome to another edition of Bitcoin Tech Talk. My name is Jimmy Song, and you can always find this newsletter at jimmysong.substack.com. Improving Lightning Point of Sale, Bitcoin Tech Talk, issue number 278. During my trip to El Salvador, I was shopping for gifts for my family on the way back. I had expected to find some things to buy in El Zante, but they were mostly just food. They mostly just had food and beach gear. As locals told me, the town has always been a surfing mecca, so the goods sold there are attuned to that crowd, even if everything can now be bought in Bitcoin. I had better luck at finding gifts at the airport, as is typical. The interesting thing about any airport is that in any country, the highest of technologies are deployed there, but it also tends to be mixed with the culture of the particular place. El Salvador was no exception. As you might expect, there were many stores which operated as a store in the U.S. For example, the high-end duty-free shops accepted cash, credit cards, and because the airport is in San Salvador, also Bitcoin. More interesting to me were the smaller shops with the local merchandise. These were stores selling local apparel, trinkets, bracelets, and local crafts. I wanted to buy some and found out that they don't take credit card. In fact, they only take two types of payments, cash and Bitcoin. What was more shocking was how they processed cash. They didn't have any sort of sophisticated point of sale system. They took your cash or Bitcoin, wrote down what you bought on a normal notepad. This struck me as pretty crazy. I'm used to shops back home where nearly everything is automated. The point of sale systems tend to have buttons for each item or barcode scanners to automatically determine the cost of a certain item. Instead, we had a shop that was manually writing down everything that was being sold and their costs so they could reconcile the sales and cash against the inventory, whose count, I imagine, is also manual. It's not long ago that every shop in the world ran on systems like this, but the lack of progress at the Salvadoran shop was a bit of a shock. That led me to think about just how much is involved in the point of sale software and how much is automated even in something as service heavy as retail. Besides sophisticated point-of-sale systems, many stores use RFID tags to automate inventory tracking, surveillance cameras to catch shoplifters, and time safe to handle theft. Stores today have a lot of technology that just isn't available to a lot of people in the third world. In that sense, Lightning is a quantum leap. For many of these businesses in El Salvador, Lightning is introducing digital accounting instead of manual accounting with cash. It's convenient, but Lightning isn't where it needs to be to truly catch them up to what's available to the first world. That said, there are downsides to modern point-of-sale systems. There's definitely more surveillance and a lack of privacy. Costco knows exactly what you buy, for example. Still, there are good reasons to want some of these benefits for businesses that use Bitcoin as the main point-of-sale system. Lightning, in other words, needs to grow up and add more features. This isn't at the protocol level, though I'm sure there are improvements there as well, but services that complement Lightning, like, say, the ability to inventory things quickly. Maybe it's barcodes, maybe it's QR codes, maybe it's using a camera on your smartphone and using AI to get the count of how many units there are. The fact is that it's difficult to run a business without such things. Payments might be much easier, but there are additional technologies that are needed on top to make running such a business easier and more profitable. What's exciting is that there's potential to do things in a way that empowers consumers rather than exploits them through privacy invasion. Lightning naturally means there's no central party that gets to know what you bought at the store, for example, so that can be an advantage. I would personally love the ability to get some structured digital list of things that I bought so that can be fed to apps that I own, for example. Whenever I pay for something in Lightning, I would like metadata back so I can inventory as quickly as a store would. Imagine if I could look up what I bought when I last bought butter so I can restock at the store instead of having to check at home. Lightning has this incredibly rich ability to communicate peer-to-peer, and that means that not just payment data can be exchanged. Both sides can grab the data about what's being bought and sold to use for their own purposes. This is something that the current system of centralized payment processors doesn't supply because there's someone in the middle preventing this useful data exchange. In other words, Lightning gives us the opportunity to fundamentally change the buying experience so we have a much better idea of our own habits. So I wrote this article thinking about sort of like upgrades to point of sale systems in El Salvador, because even if they're using Lightning, a lot of the stuff that's around it is still very manual. And bringing them up to sort of like 21st century levels requires some upgrades. And the thing is, we get a chance to sort of completely rethink what point of sale systems should be. A lot of it is linked back to inventory and just keeping account of all the stuff that's going on. And obviously, doing it manually is very difficult and labor intensive and so on. But if you can do certain things to make that a lot easier using Lightning, there needs to be additional services on top. So if you can just keep track, for example, of what you've sold through Lightning as a merchant, that would be a wonderful thing. Like on your phone, having a Lightning POS app that that you can program and say, okay, well, here's what these things cost, and you can put a feel for a coupon or something like that. Those are useful metrics, useful things, and any web store already knows how to do all of that. But the physical store experience needs to catch up and have that inventory management and accounting and all those things that any retail business needs to do. But in addition, Lightning is a two-way street, so you have the ability to get data straight from the person that's selling it to you. Now, we get this in the form of receipts or something like that, but that's not good structured data, right? It's you're like, I don't know how many people input what they get or whatever they bought into their computer or whatever. But if that could be done sort of in an automated way, that would be amazing. If it was structured data that came back, then now you can have like an inventory of what you bought. And reconcile it against the stuff in your house, something like that. That would be amazing. But we don't have those systems because there hasn't really been a way to grab that data. The best, I think, the best that people have done is maybe download. Mint has like stuff where it'll suck data from your credit cards or whatever, and it's only because these third-party services have access to all of the buying stuff. But that's a little creepy. I would rather do it myself, right? Like have that data myself. And Lightning allows for that, and allows me to have a better idea of what I already own. Did I buy this book last time I was in? Did I buy it online maybe many years ago? Like people rebuy stuff or whatever, or like this would be also very useful for warranties and stuff like that. If if all of that data is sort of structured and in there, then, well, instead of companies taking advantage of the fact that people don't remember that they have a warranty, you would have this data sort of in a structured way, and something breaks. Now you can like quickly look up, oh, okay, like I bought it 4 months ago, and this has a 6-month warranty. I can go exchange it. Like these are just practical consumer things that would be very useful. That something like Lightning lets you do because you have that rich interchange of data. Anyway, that was my thought in this little article that I wrote, and hopefully it's useful to somebody, and maybe you can be the one to program something like that. All right, let's talk about Bitcoin. Ben Carman has a new blog where he talks about Frost, among other things. Frost itself is a cool concept where you can aggregate signatures from K-event participants instead of MUSIG's N-of-N requirement. The interesting thing about this protocol is that it's round optimized. That is, the protocol tries to minimize the number of interactions between the participants, and according to the paper, there are 2 rounds needed, though the first round can be done as an initial setup. The rest of Ben's blog is well worth reading as he goes through MUSIG, Taproot, and Core. So I love that he started this newsletter, and I'll definitely be reading it. But yeah, he has he talks about Frost, MUSIG, Taproot, and Core. The most interesting thing to me was Frost. I did go take a look at that paper. I want to see if I can code it. I think Jesse Posner has already coded a Python version and is working on integration with libsec p256k1-zkp. So that stuff is pretty cool, and I hope to be able to read more on that. But yeah, I mean, Frost is K of N, so that obviates the need to create only N of N stuff. Grubel shows how you can solo mine using Blockstream Satellite. The guy goes into setting up a solo mining operation using BFG Miner and Bitcoin Core. The probability of finding a block is astronomically low, of course, but it's a fun experiment to run since getting the blocks to build on doesn't even require an internet connection. The only thing missing is emitting a found block somehow to the network, which could be done via internet, SMS, or something similar. While it would be amazing to be able to mine without an internet connection, the guide is more so that if your internet connection goes down, you can still continue mining and not waste precious hash rate. I suspect something like this will become really interesting as more energy sources are harvested with the minimal infrastructure connection requirements. So apparently the only ways you could solo mine other than this is like using a pool software, which doesn't make sense because you still have to give like 2% to the pool even though it's solo mine. So instead just like solo mine and not have this third-party dependency. And I think that's the right way to do it. The interesting thing is you can get the block data off of Blockstream Satellite. Really, it's only when you find a block and emitting it that's a little bit of a problem. You're going to have like 2 megabytes of data that you need to send to the network. And that's tricky, right? And getting that out there, maybe via SMS, maybe just like the block header, and then give some clue as to how the Merkle root is calculated or something like that, or the constituent transactions or something. That might, I think Fiber lets you do something like that. So you can reduce sort of like the amount of data that needs to be sent. I don't know if it'll fit in an SMS, but like that's a possibility. You need some sort of connection so that you can send something out. But it's an interesting experiment. All right. Kraken has implemented proof of reserves. The main idea is that there's a Merkle tree of liabilities in the form of user account balances, which can be compared to UTXOs on chain, which Kraken can sign. This means that each user can get proof that their account balance was included in the liabilities without knowing any other user's balance. The post is great because there's example code to run to prove that your particular balance was included in the Merkle root. So they'll give you a Merkle proof for your particular liability being in there. I haven't run this myself, but I plan to with the Kraken balance I have and see if it's included in the Merkle root, and if it is, then you can be sure that okay, well there's a the proof of reserve clearly is there. But yeah, it's cool, and I expect anyone that has a Kraken balance and is kind of a developer to run that. All right, Lightning. Simple Lightning has a nice post on Lightning Dust and what we can do about it. The main gist is that while there's no Lightning Dust at the moment, as routing fees increase, there will be certain payments that simply won't be economical. The post is an honest look at how micro the payments infrastructure can go and what the practical limitations of the economic reality are and worth thinking about. So the idea is that you can have Lightning Dust payments that are just so small that no one's going to route them because the routing fees are going to overwhelm whatever micropayment that you want to make. So unless you have a direct channel, in which case, that makes all the sense in the world. If you're actually routing it through the Lightning Network, the routing fees may make it kind of, dustworthy, right? Like you want to send like 1 microsat, but the routing fee is 1 sat. That's not going to make any sense. So there are sort of like natural limitations like that, which I hadn't thought of, and I thought it was a pretty insightful little thing there. Lai takes the Chinese New Year red envelope concept onto the Lightning Network. For those that don't celebrate Chinese New Year, gifts for this holiday are typically cash bills in a red and gold envelope. Lai essentially lets you print out a QR code, which is LN URL for receiving some amount into your Lightning wallet. It's the old school Bitcoin paper wallet gift, except now it works with Lightning. I love the concept for cash gifting societies, which is a significant portion of the world. This has amazing potential to replace cash gifts. I'd love to see something a little less centralized eventually, perhaps with an LN URL that goes to my own server to redeem from a Lightning Network wallet that I control. So the idea is you deposit some money with Lai, and they hold that money until it gets redeemed through that LN URL. So the custody is in this third party until someone scans the QR code, it goes to an LN URL, and then they can receive the money into their Lightning wallet. So very clever, because unlike a Bitcoin paper wallet, it's not already in that address. It only gets pushed to the node when it gets scanned and it's requested. So unlike Bitcoin paper wallets, where if you gave it to somebody and they lose it, that money is lost forever. This is a little better, but obviously the other person doesn't possess it until they scan the QR code. So I like the concept. I would just like my own version where it's on my Lightning node, and then somebody can I can issue these based on that, and give it as a nice gift or something like that in a nice envelope. So you have something physical to present. Dono.at is a way to receive Lightning payments during live streams. The problem with receiving money during streams is that the platforms typically take 30% of the money. Dono essentially removes this platform tax and allows creators to receive the money directly to their Lightning wallet. These solutions will be critical as more people move off these platforms and take their audiences with them. So, if you do a live stream on Twitch or YouTube or whatever, they always just take 30% of whatever donations people give you. So instead, if you use Lightning payments and hook it up to your own node using the software, then bam, like all the money comes to you. I think a lot of these creators are giving providing way more value to the platforms than the 30% of the cut that they're getting. So rationally, they should move, and as Lightning adoption grows, this will become more economical for them, and that'll mean like a 30% increase in their pay, and sort of less power to these centralized entities like YouTube and so on. Economics, engineering, etc. Nick Carter writes eloquently about ESG misunderstandings about Bitcoin. As he points out, the criticism from the environmentalists fundamentally misunderstand how the energy grid works and is full of misinformation. For example, the natural gas power plant in New York was demonized as using dirty coal when it's not. The fact that this article made it into Newsweek bodes well for more subtlety and nuance in this discussion. So Nick has been writing a ton on this stuff, and I'm glad that he's going into a publication like Newsweek. The article itself is great, and it just sort of exposes a lot of the misunderstandings. Basically, the critics don't understand how energy works at all, and they tend to twist the truth a little bit in order to make their point, which I think, for me, completely undermines their point. Mark Jeftovic comments on the Canadian trucker GoFundMe saga and shows how Bitcoin fixes this. As he points out, what GoFundMe attempted to do, which was to distribute funds donated to charities of GoFundMe's choice, is exactly what a CBDC future will be like. I would go further and say that what GoFundMe attempted to do, central banks have been doing for a long time now, stealing from people to benefit their cronies. The episode showed why Bitcoin is fundamental to monetary sovereignty and prevention of theft. So, GoFundMe obviously, had like $10 million or something like that in funds that were donated to the Canadian truckers. They attempted to say, okay, well, we're not going to give it to the truckers. Instead, we're going to distribute it to these charities like the ACLU, which don't support these truckers at all. A bunch of people were pissed off because that's very clearly fraudulent. And then they reversed their stance and said, oh, we'll just refund everybody's money. Now that's what they attempted to do, stealing people's funds. What Mark is saying is, okay, well, if you have CBDCs, this is going to happen all day long. Well, if you have, you kind of already have that with central banks. They're stealing your money so they can give it to whoever they want. Whether it's investment banks or your like public employee unions or something like that. Whatever it is, the favored get the money and not the non-favored, and that's been the case for a while now. It's just that people aren't waking up to it. But so, in other words, if you're upset about GoFundMe or what they were planning to do, that's happening to you every day already. Fidelity makes the case for Bitcoin maximalism. Well, maybe not exactly, but they come pretty close by making the very important distinction between Bitcoin and other quote unquote digital assets. As they explain in the paper, investors are wrongly applying the technology investing framework to Bitcoin instead of the monetary investing framework. This is sadly a mistake too many newbies make and get into altcoins and all the degenerate gambling behavior that comes with it. Hopefully, a report like this can help the more traditional investors understand what makes Bitcoin different. So, Fidelity's report, I think, is very strongly for Bitcoin, and they sort of tiptoe around the altcoin issue, but basically say it's not Bitcoin, it's not a store of value, it's something else entirely. And I think that distinction is very important to make, and I'm glad that they made it. Marshall Long reveals that Intel is getting into the ASIC game. The design team is apparently from Austin, and this is set to be a US-centric enterprise. This is a significant development as most mining equipment is currently manufactured in China. Chip manufacturing is notoriously slow and requires tremendous lead times, so there probably won't be anything for at least a year. But this is exciting for a multitude of reasons. We can't eliminate the possibility that China may someday ban mining equipment manufacturing and having more vendors outside of China will be really good for Bitcoin. So Intel is getting into the ASIC manufacturing game, specifically with Bitcoin ASICs. They do have fabrication facilities and so on. They really don't need anybody else to go do this. But yeah, it looks like the design looks really good. We'll see what the yields are like and stuff like that. But this could be tremendous for the Bitcoin network. Dirty Ball Media exposes the deception around celebrities buying NFTs. As they point out, Justin Bieber wasn't going on some shopping spree with his own money, as the media reported, but he was spending money that was given to him. Much like how diamond wedding rings became popular, this is a marketing stunt meant to give a completely different impression than what's actually happening. In fact, there's a flow chart of all the different, obviously, conflict of interest celebrity relationships in the NFT world. So NFTs are using all the dirty tricks of marketing, right? Like they're making it seem like Justin Bieber is so enamored with NFTs that he's spending millions of dollars of his own money buying them, when in fact that's not the case. They gave him a bunch of money, he spent it on some NFTs, and that's what happened. And this is not very different than how altcoins have worked for a long time. You give a bunch away to VCs for very, very cheap, and they promote the heck out of it and make it seem like this big thing, and then other people get into it and it becomes a hype cycle based on nothing. So that's what NFTs are. And that's it. LM Markets explains why AOPP was such a big deal. The intentions were good in the sense that the organizations who adopted AOPP wanted to encourage self-custody of BTC, even at the cost of some KYC, but ended up running up against the attack against permissionlessness. It's an interesting read as the demands of imperfect self-custody trade it off against the demands of permissionlessness of Bitcoin. The regulation itself is the problem, and I believe resisting bad regulation is the long-term play. We'll see how the saga plays out, though. So the reason why a lot of these wallets adopted AOPP was because they wanted to encourage self-custody, even at the expense of some KYC. It's otherwise, if they didn't adopt AOPP, then users would keep the coins on the exchanges and not get it out into self-custodied wallets, and basically a lot of people got in an uproar. Why do you need the government's permission to withdraw Bitcoin? So all of those wallets, I think, have more or less reversed course and are no longer supporting AOPP. But there is this trade-off when you have bad regulation like this. You either KYC or leave it on an exchange, and both are pretty bad options. But the regulation is the problem, and I think it was good for that article to point it out. Anyway, let's talk about some of the quick hits. Maybe software engineering salaries won't go up forever. This is Google's AlphaMine. They were able to do pretty constrained computer science problems and do a really good job on it, which means that maybe they can replace some level of coders at some point. Bitfinex hack coins are on the move. So there was a hack many years ago, and it looks like those hack coins are now moving. We'll see what happens with that. A bipartisan bill in the House of Representatives seeks to eliminate cap gains taxes on small purchases with Bitcoin. I think the limit is somewhere around $200. It would be nice if this were to pass. It is bipartisan, so there's some potential there. Texas had a certain freeze, much like last year, but this year miners helped everyone prepare. So you had Riot Blockchain or Wheatstone in Rockdale, Texas, that decided to turn off their miners before the winter freeze came as a way to prepare. And this is one of the big advantages of mining, is that they can turn off their equipment if there's going to be an expected surge in demand of that electricity, which is exactly what happened. Another week, more centralized altcoin founders suing each other. This is Ethereum, and the shady past of all these people are sort of coming into the light. Another week, another altcoin has an exploit. This is something called Worm Hole or something like that. Yeah, it's and it was like an exploit of 326 million. It looks like some hedge fund is making it whole using money printed out of nothing. Events: Bitcoin and the American Dream book launch is this week in Washington, D.C. on February 10th. Come join me and meet the co-authors as well as some influential DC people for the event. I am in London for Advancing Bitcoin March 3rd and 4th. I am also going to be at Bitcoin 2022 in Miami, April 6th through 8th. I'll also be doing the programming blockchain seminars in London, March 1st and 2nd, and Miami, April 4th and 5th. On this week's Bitcoin Fixes This, I talked to Josh Young about banking services. We talked about the mortgage process in El Salvador and how Bitcoin is solving real problems. Go have a listen on that if you want to know more about how mortgages are changing because of Bitcoin in El Salvador. I read through last week's newsletter, which you can find here. Here's the latest book, which is out now, Bitcoin and the American Dream. My other books are Thank God for Bitcoin, The Little Bitcoin Book, and Programming Bitcoin, which are all available on Amazon. Unchained Capital is a sponsor of this newsletter. I'm an advisor and proud to be a part of a company that's enhancing security for Bitcoin holders. If you need multi-sig collaborative custody or Bitcoin native financial services, learn more at unchained.com. Fiat the Lenda, this song is done.